Well, good afternoon everyone. My name's Emma and I'm the manager of the anthropology unit at the North Queensland Land Council. Before I begin, I want to take a moment to acknowledge the Yagara people and the Turrbal people as the traditional custodians of Meanjin, Brisbane, the lands on which we meet, work and learn. I pay my respects to the Yagara and Turrbal elders, past, present and emerging. When I was writing my acknowledgement, I had cause to reflect on the reason I'm here today. That is, working as an applied anthropologist in native title. I grew up west of here in Ipswich, and up until the time I went to university, I had the privilege of being neighbours with one of the elders of the Yagara people. As a young person, this man and his family would regularly take me with them on their trips to country and would include me when sharing his people's stories. This experience had a profound impact on my life and ultimately my vocational choices. As here I am, a few decades later, still working as an applied anthropologist in the native title sector. So today, it means something for me to acknowledge and pay my respects to the elders of this country here and the formative role some of them have played in my life. Moving now to North Queensland, the NQLC is one of 5 native title representative bodies and service providers operating in Queensland. It is a small rep body with less than 40 staff. Like other NTRBs in the country, NQLC has had a high degree of success in securing positive native title determinations through core country claims for many groups in the region from the 1990s to early 2010s. That rate has tapered off in recent years, relevant to the intersection of a number of contributing factors, but principally among them is the increase in inter and intra-group disputation playing out through the native title process. A familiar situation I would expect for many people here today. Referring to this very familiar map from the NNTT, moving clockwise, the NQLC's representative region extends south along the Queensland coast from the Daintree River to just south of Serena, inland to west of Richmond and north towards Normanton in the southeastern Gulf country along the Norman River, and then in a generally east-northeast direction back towards the Daintree. It encompasses the North Queensland cities of Cairns and Townsville, regional towns of Charters Towers, Hewendell, Georgetown and Richmond. The region incorporates areas of World Heritage listed Daintree rainforest, wet tropics, tropical savanna, rangelands and southeastern Gulf rivers and the Cassowary coast. Along the Cassowary coast, like much of North Queensland, you are likely to encounter lots of big things. Like this, the big cassowary at Mission Beach on Jiddu country. Oops, the big peanut at Tolga on Yidinji country. A personal favourite of mine, the big frog on a banana outside of Innisfail on Mamu country. Lately, however, North Queensland has been the home of the big wet. This is Din Din, Barron Falls, in all its thundering glory on Jabbergai country. Now I could go on about more big things in North Queensland because there are many more, and the spiders and snakes could get their own postcode. But today my co-presenter and I are here to talk to you about big issues affecting the applied anthropology workforce in the native title sector and the small steps we can take to make a big difference. So, unfortunately the slides will be much drier from here on in, so you've been warned. The native title sector is a relatively small employment sector within Australia. I think most would agree it is a bit niche. Applied native title anthropology sits within that sector. For perspective, it is estimated that nationally there are about 150 applied anthropologists working broadly within the native title sector. This workforce supports the 11 native title representative bodies and service providers across Australia to progress native title. Over the past, whoops, wrong one. Sorry, I'm learning to drive this. Over the past decade, the native title process has become increasingly complex, disputative and difficult to obtain positive processual outcomes for First Nations people in Australia. This is taking its toll on the relatively small applied anthropological workforce doing this work. Many of you will have direct experience of pressure within the sector, which permeates all levels of the system, from the court, where the minuscule pool of experts are forced into back-to-back court deadlines, to the bush, where clients are subjected to meeting after meeting to seek instructions, carry out clearances, surveys or monitoring, and the ever-increasing intra or intramural consultation and mediation of disputes. Before I go further, I will flag that this is not an all doom and gloom talk. There are silver linings to come, and a lot of positive work is being done by the CNTA and in NTRBs and service providers across the country to start addressing the issues raised here. So stick with me and I promise it will pick up. It is generally acknowledged within the sector that the pipelines for building and replenishing the applied anthropological workforce have diminished over the past couple of decades. And simply put, there just aren't enough native title anthropologists to do the work. Over the past 20 years, there have been 4 surveys of anthropologists and anthropological work in Australia. One in 2004 by Anthropos, one in 2014 by Usher, one in 2016 by the Australian Anthropological Society, and the most recent being the Centre for Native Title Anthropology in 2022. I won't go into too much detail here about the 2022 CNTA survey, as I believe Julia will be talking about this later in the program. I will focus on summarising the key issues identified in that survey and the work that the CNTA, research managers and various NTRBs and SPs have been doing to develop strategies to meaningfully address the key issues broadly impacting our workforce, from recruitment, development, retention and replenishment. Once I've set the scene, my co-presenter, Amy Usher, will discuss what YMAC has been doing to grow your own and provide an example of proof of concept, or what an applied anthropology workforce development and retention plan might look like. Right. In 2022, the CNTA conducted a sector-wide survey of applied anthropologists in the native title sector. This was the first comprehensive survey of the sector since 2016. When the survey responses were analysed by the CNTA, 3 dominant issues were identified as high-risk factors affecting the workforce. So in 2022, these 3 issues were already having a real-time effect on applied anthropologists working in the native title sector. Whilst I will focus on the applied anthropology workforce here, observationally, I think a number of the issues identified in the 2022 survey will also have a degree of relevance to First Nations and legal colleagues working within the sector. The significant workforce issues identified in the 2022 CNTA survey were the lack of or limited career paths available in native title, burnout caused by heavy workloads and a stressful work environment, and community perceptions of the role of anthropology in native title. In mid-2023, the CNTA brought together a focus group of anthropology and research managers working in the native title sector. The purpose was to facilitate discussion on the survey findings, alongside their views on the issues and challenges affecting the workforce, and any innovations or tried and tested amelioration strategies in developmental practice. This information was viewed and discussed in the context of operational and organisational risk. The 3 key workforce risks identified by this focus group were recruitment and retention, of appropriately qualified and experienced staff, development of staff capability, particularly tertiary qualified people with limited or no experience or field experience or experience within Australia. Development and implementation of on-the-job training or micro-credentialing alongside a full-time workload for staff already in the sector. My focus when discussing these issues and strategies will be on what could realistically be developed, implemented, or achieved by research units themselves, noting that for every barrier identified, it is acknowledged that sector-wide change will need to be supported by the appropriate level of government and the executive leadership of individual native title organisations. I hope that towards the end of this session we can throw it to the floor for other examples of grow your own workforce initiatives being developed or implemented in the native title space. So I will encourage people at the end of Amy's session to jump in and tell us a little bit about what you've been doing to grow your own, including any challenges, learnings, outcomes that you have encountered during that process. So, number one, lack of career path within the native title sector. For a long time, career paths in applied native title anthropology have been limited in their scope. More recently, native title organisations are beginning to think more laterally in terms of how to provide meaningful career development and progression opportunities to interest and retain anthropological staff. The emergence of subject matter experts and practice area managers seek to recognise staff experience and contribution. This is an adaptable approach to provide career pathways that have been developed and implemented, and such positions are available at the moment that I'm aware of at the Northern Land Council and CNTA, and the feedback from those organisations has been positive. Number two, burnout. Native title work involves fieldwork, research and engagement with Indigenous communities to document and present evidence of traditional land ownership and usage. The work often involves prolonged fieldwork, complex documentation and emotional toll. Factors that are contributing to burnout, the intensity and the nature of the native title work, contribute to high levels of burnout among anthropologists. Key factors including high workload and tight deadlines. The urgency of legal deadlines impacts on anthropologists, leading to long working hours. Isolation and lack of support. Working in remote areas can result in professional and personal isolation. Limited access to support services exacerbates feelings of stress and fatigue. Emotional strain. Constant exposure to community struggles and the responsibility of accurately representing their stories can lead to emotional exhaustion. Ethical and moral dilemmas. Navigating the ethical complexities of working with Indigenous communities, ensuring respectful representation and dealing with conflicting interests can be a significant source of stress. Workplace issues. Burnout can stem from poor work health and safety protocols, long driving to remote locations, substandard accommodation, all of which can lead to an incompatibility for remote work for some people. And the physical toll of field work. Demands of back-to-back field trips involving logistical tasks, meeting design, long distance driving, managing clients' needs and administrative reporting can all lead to significant physical and mental fatigue. The importance of addressing burnout in native title work is critical for several reasons, namely the retention of skilled professionals, the quality of work produced by those professionals, community relationships and professional well-being. Some of the strategies that have been discussed to mitigate burnout and attract and retain staff in the native title work, it is essential to implement strategies that will ameliorate these issues. Workload management, distributing work more evenly and setting realistic deadlines. Support systems, providing access to mental health services, professional counselling and peer support. Professional development, offering training in stress management, resilience building, cultural competency, can equip anthropologists with the skills to navigate the challenges of their work. Organisational culture, promoting a culture that values work-life balance, recognises the contributions of staff and fosters open communication, can create supportive and sustainable work environments. Remote support, leveraging technology to maintain connection when colleagues are in the field. And gender and safety support, addressing the specific challenges faced by female anthropologists and gender diverse anthropologists, including safety concerns and gender-based discrimination, is vital for creating an inclusive and supportive work environment. Burnout amongst anthropologists in native title is a pressing issue that requires immediate and sustained attention. By understanding and addressing the factors contributing to burnout, organisations can create a more supportive environment that not only attracts skilled professionals, but also ensures their long-term retention and well-being. This, in turn, enhances the overall effectiveness and integrity of native title work, contributing to the broader goal of justice and recognition for Indigenous peoples in Australia. Number 3, community perceptions of the role of anthropology in native title. This, I think, is a large and complex issue to address and it is recognised as a contributing factor to burnout. With this in mind, the subject area needs a targeted session to address properly. I will address points 4 through 6 collectively in the context of a proposed broad remedial measure to support improvements across these 3 areas, which are recruitment and retention, staff capability development, and implementing on-the-job training. Right. The development and implementation of a recognised national work level standard and capability and competency framework within the sector for anthropologists and research positions seeks to address blocks and challenges identified in workforce surveys. An applied anthropology and native title research work level standard would address challenges affecting recruitment and retention, career progression and development by providing transparent linkages between knowledge and skill competencies, position status levels, remuneration through standardised, flexible capability and competency frameworks, and one which is adaptable to NTRB and SPs of varied size and capacity. To develop a work level standard, sample analysis of NTRB and NTR-SP pay scales and classifications, position descriptions, and capability and competency frameworks currently used by NTRB was undertaken. This was cross-referenced with samples of comparable agencies within the state, territory, and Commonwealth public service agencies. For a work level standard to have broad utility within the sector, the framework needs to be sufficiently high level to recognise that some organisations already have work standards aligned with existing remuneration and position classifications under their enterprise agreements and supporting policies. It is hoped that over time, the work level standards and capability and competency frameworks will provide confidence to all NTRBs and SPs that they can align position classifications and remuneration to support long-term career progression. Another key function of a work level standard is support for a capability assessment model capable of broadening the scope of recruitment. The flow-on effect could be to provide greater diversification in the sector, for a wider range of discipline qualifications with allied competencies and capabilities. However, success in sector recruitment is dependent on developing fit-for-purpose, on-the-job training and skills development pathways that support new entrants to the discipline of anthropology, including applied anthropological research capability. A national sector-wide applied anthropology and native title research work level standard will support both employers and their employees through the recruitment phase, advertising to attract the candidates with the required competencies, if not capabilities, classify positions with certainty, consistency and equity, and provide a framework with which to apply training and development opportunities for employees to develop capabilities and open career paths across the sector. Overall, it will provide an avenue to strengthen the anthropological and research capacity within and across all levels of the sector. Technical issue. Right. The development of a national work standard would importantly provide a framework for pay scale consistency across the sector. Inconsistency in remuneration within the sector not only affects individual career progression, but impacts on the sector's ability to attract and retain skilled professionals. Implementing a standardised pay scale system supported by a national work standard across the NTRB and SP sector would offer numerous benefits to both employees and organisations, such as clarity and transparency in career progression, retention of skilled professionals, facilitation of inter-organisation mobility, equity and fairness, simplified recruitment and resulting budgeting, benchmarking against other sectors, whilst acknowledging that there are some challenges and considerations for this sort of mediation, this remedial recommendation. Implementing a sector-wide standardised pay scale is not without those challenges. Factors such as regional cost of living differences, varying organisational budgets, and existing employment agreements need to be carefully considered. Additionally, there may be resistance from organisations that currently offer higher salaries as competitive advantage. The purpose of our session today is to provide an overview of what the CNTA and research managers across the sector have been thinking about and working towards to build a strong and resilient anthropological workforce that the native title sector desperately needs. I think it is a shared view across the country that, as native title goes, the landscape in which we operate is becoming exponentially more complex, challenging and resource intensive. Much of the work being carried out at the coalface is done by NTRB and NTSP staff, anthropologists, engagement officers and lawyers. With due native title qualification and training options available in the Australian learning institutions, the NTRB and NTSP sector must step up and deliver the workplaces, training and development and career opportunities that will attract, support, develop and retain the very small pool of dedicated people committed to pushing native title forward in Australia. So on that note, I will hand over to an anthropologist and a manager who has been a champion for workforce innovation in the sector. Amy Usher is the Manager of Research Country and Culture Services at Yamachi from Western Australia. And she will give you a rundown of some of the training development support initiatives implemented at WIMAC, all of which speak to various workforce issues identified in the recent work by the CNTA. Amy's presentation on the various workforce development initiatives implemented at WIMAC demonstrate that grow your own strategies are effective at addressing workforce capability problems. Anyway, that's enough from me.
Thank you, Emma. Thanks everyone. It's really great to see a whole bunch of people, including people that I haven't met before, so that's really exciting to see so many faces in the room. Just also want to acknowledge country and the traditional owners of the lands that we're on and pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging, and also to all of the traditional owners that we all work with and the offices where we all work. So, thanks. So for those who don't know me and don't know WIMAC, WIMAC is the native title rep body for the Geraldton and Pilbara region over in WA. There's a lovely map up there which shows you a bunch of towns but doesn't actually show you any of the claims or determinations, so sorry about that. But you can see there it takes up quite a big part of the state. It's been the rep body for a number of years. In fact, we had our 30th anniversary last year, which was really exciting. There's about over 40 positive determinations across both regions, and WIMAC has assisted in some capacity with about 36 of those, from varying levels to managing and running a claim all the way to the end, to being involved at various stages as well. So there's a lot of work. There's a really long history at WIMAC, and there's a mixture of work across the organisation currently. So we have, new claims, PVC support, we have executive office, we have a lot of work happening in the unclaimed areas, of which there are still big chunks in the Pilbara and the Yamatji region as well. Return of materials, we have heritage team and a land and sea management team as well. I am the manager of our research team, native title research team, and also the heritage team and the land and sea management team as well. But I like to try and focus more on the research team because I'm an anthropologist, that's where I come from. And I started at WIMAC in 2012 as a kind of young, very, very green anthropologist who really didn't know much of what was going on. And training and support and development is, it's a really big thing for me because, and this is no criticism on the people that I worked with at the time in 2012 because they were all wonderful, but I started at WIMAC on a Monday and I remember coming to the office and reading a report on membership for a group that I was about to work with. And the next day I was on a plane at 6:30 in the morning up to Headland and had no freaking idea what I was doing. So, but it was kind of great. It was actually a really interesting kind of dropping in the middle of nowhere situation. It was a little bit of sink or swim. Luckily I swam and I really enjoyed it, but it's pretty confronting, especially if you haven't worked in the industry before. And so, from that time I started as an anthropologist and I've worked my way through at WIMAC. And training and support and development is an important thing, and we've done a lot of work, particularly over the last few years, about trying to pull things together to support staff. So, the presentation is going to focus on some of the training and support that WIMAC offers to start working at the organisation, and also so kind of broadly things that we do at WIMAC, but also then specifically the research team, and also some of the things we're doing to help grow the workforce kind of outside of WIMAC, so promote anthropology, promote working in the rep body sector. As I just said, the need for training and support and education, I think, in the area has always been a real issue. And over the years, it has become increasingly important to address this for staff and managers, and I think, organisations, rep bodies as a whole as well. A quick disclaimer, WIMAC is a relatively large organisation, and I'm aware that not all NTRBs or PVCs or government have access to resources or funding that we may do to enable it to implement like a high level of training and support. But I do hope that some of the ideas here and some of the things that we do can be kind of tweaked or taken and implemented at your own organisations. And I'm always really happy to have a chat with people after as well about ideas. So I guess across WIMAC in terms of as an organisation, over the last probably 3 or 4 years, there's been a lot of work done from our HR department about trying to have sort of better training and induction type things. So we do have a suite of inductions that everyone who's new and also existing has to do, and they're run every couple of months, and it's just every department does an induction and a presentation, and everyone gets to understand sort of what WIMAC does and how things work and how those departments kind of work together as well. We also have Go One training, to the delight of all of our staff, which is an online training module thing, and everyone has to do the onboarding stuff, and then there's these optional things as well that people can do. It's kind of more general from an organisational perspective. There's stuff about workplace bullying and harassment. There's stuff about, all sorts of different things. But yeah, that's a requirement of WIMAC. When you first start, you have to finish these induction modules. We also have all staff, which for those who've worked at WIMAC is always a fun time. It's 2 days a year, and we've got ours coming up at the end of the month actually, where all of the staff from WIMAC get together. So from all of the different offices and departments, we all come together for 2 days in Perth or other places and actually collaborate and talk. We have sessions. Often there's a cultural awareness component to it. We've had some really great sessions in the past, and it's a way for people to actually get together. Sometimes people from the Perth office don't really get to meet or talk to people from the Broome office or the Port Hedland office. So it is a really good way for people to come together and understand what everyone's doing in the space as well. We also have cultural awareness. So every year that is put on, it's alternated between the regions, and that is for new staff who get to go out on country with traditional owners, with a group of people, and learn about country. And, you know, again, it's a really good way for people to get to know each other, and if you're new into the organisation, to get to know about one of the groups that WIMAC works with. There's managers training as well, which is kind of a general managers training that if you're a new manager, you get to go and do that. We've also just recently had de-escalation training. So that was kind of an organisational wide thing where we had an external provider and we went, I think it was 2 separate groups, but we actually all went together and went in to do this de-escalation training. And I think a lot of people found it really helpful, and I think it was interesting for those people who don't work in the field to have conversations with people that do work in the field to see the sorts of things that they might be up against and sorts of experiences that they've had as well. We've obviously got our EPA as well, so I'm a big advocate for that, and I encourage all my staff to speak to someone if they need to. We do get regular reminders, and I think, you know, I know that there are some organisations who are looking at how to increase that as well and increase sessions and those sorts of things, and I do really think that it's a great thing. Just being able to talk to someone external is just really helpful. We also, after the voice result, had some yarning circles that were set up through our People and Development or HR unit that was for Aboriginal staff and other people as well, to be able to actually sort of sit down and talk through things and process that result. And I know from some of the people that were involved in that that was really helpful for them as well. We also have regular town halls, which is every 3 months, where we have sort of all staff get together and just a bit of an update of, you know, what's been happening, if they're new starters and those sorts of things. So a lot of it is communication and collaboration and talking to each other and trying to do that as much as possible, particularly when you've got a lot of staff that are often out of the office, you know, field work, and so not necessarily connecting or crossing over as much as what you would like. So that's a picture of last year's cultural awareness and on Yungamar country. Sorry, there's lots of backs of heads of pictures because it's easier to get permission for that. And this is all staff last year as well. So again, backs of heads, sorry. So from a research perspective, research specific, again, over the last couple of years, I've sort of thought a lot about what can we do and started with the inductions, and I've been very fortunate to have some amazing staff, 2 of which are here. Ben is also here. He's also amazing, but he's kind of new. But Luke and Corey, who are our senior anthropologists, who we've all kind of talked about these things and talked about what do you need when you first start? What's that starter pack or induction look like? So we've put together this lovely starter pack, which I'm sure is a bit daunting. I don't know, Ben, maybe, was it daunting when you received it last year? Kind of, yeah. So look, documents, readings, processes, maps, you know, just to get a real understanding of not just WIMAC, but native title, some key readings, and some of our sort of internal process documents. You know, how do you do this? How do you do membership for a PDC? How do you deal with a family information form? Those sorts of things. This has taken a long time to get all this stuff together. It doesn't just happen, so I appreciate its time and resources, but I really do think it's worthwhile in the end. It really does help with succession planning and new staff when you've got some of those documented processes in place. So in terms of internal training and presentations for research, WIMAC History and Functions, which I try to do for all new CCS staff, so that's Heritage and LSM as well. And this just talks a little bit about WIMAC's history, a little bit of history of native title, and what's WIMAC's role. So what are our NTRB functions? What does it mean to be a service provider? Where does the native title research fit into the wider process? We also have genealogical training, and shout out to Nissa, who's not here today, but she does some amazing work with internal training with our staff. and does genealogical stuff. And that's often an ongoing training. So with Family Treemaker, which is the program that we use, but also not just about the program, about, you know, recording genealogies and some of the complexity and sensitivity that goes in with that as well. And that kind of feeds on to conversations that we'll have about family information forms. So when we get family inquiries, you know, people call up and talk to us, and, you know, they can be really difficult conversations and really sensitive conversations. So making sure that people feel confident to be able to have those conversations and supported as well is part of that process of training with the genealogies and things. Field note training as well, so making sure that, you know, people are recording field notes in a certain way. We had some training, I think it was the end of 2023, with a consultant who had the most amazingly well organised field notes I think I've ever seen, and it was a little bit daunting to sort of think to try and replicate that. But that was really great, and particularly great, I think, for everyone, even people who've been around for a long time, to just remember about how you're recording field notes and the indexing and all those sorts of things. Report editing and reviewing as well. So last year we had a couple of really good internal sessions again, run by senior anthropologists, about report editing and reviewing and giving people confidence to feel like they can do that for consultant reports, and sort of helping staff to understand, you know, what are the things to look out for and how do you do this work. And then also specific training suited to the position. So people come in as a research assistant or an anthropologist or a senior anthropologist. I think the idea, and we were talking about it in our group earlier, of kind of shadowing people, seeing how other people work and what they do, and having the opportunity to do that. Going out on, you know, field work, even if you're not actually there to record, you're there to help logistically and sort of see how things work and what's happening. And I think as well, to sort of add to that, is that what we try to do at WIMAC, and we have the benefit of having a biggish team, is that people don't go out on field work on their own unless it's kind of absolutely necessary or something's happened. Generally, there's 2 or 3 people together going out, and so you've got that support and that collaboration. And it's great for learning as well. So, you know, a senior person might go out and a couple of more junior people, and that seems to work really well. So we also have the benefit of having the Attorney General's professional development funding for training, which we've been getting for a number of years. And so we do various topics to do with that. So we have sort of 5 workshop days a year that we do. We do some stuff internal, we do some stuff external as well. And I have to say that that's like just been a game changer. Like, it's been amazing to have that external funding to be able to do those workshops. And, you know, we've also had things like accredited mediation courses in the past that we've seen anthropologists to as well. So that's been really helpful. There's also the kind of other relevant general training. So following on from the de-escalation, there's like advanced de-escalation training. I love this one, having difficult conversations. I think that's more about staff than being out in the field. Vicarious trauma, which is obviously a really big issue that I know a lot of staff, you know, face. And this is through an external provider as well. So while it's not native title specific, I think some of the skills and things that you learn in those more general things can obviously be applied to the work that we do. First aid and forward drive sounds really basic, but it's obviously really important. The other thing that we're looking at doing now is actually doing specific forward drive training for the environments that we're working in, because we find that you do forward drive training that's accredited, but it's not necessarily fit for purpose. And so trying to see how we can actually make sure that people feel confident driving in sand or, you know, on really rocky terrain, and not just kind of learning the basics. So that's something we're hoping to do or start to do this year. That's also the back of someone's head. That's some AGS training that we did on genealogies, actually, in October 2023. I think there were a couple of people in the room who went to that one. Yeah, cool. So I guess some of the practical things in the workplace as well, communication with a number of exclamation marks, because I think it actually is really important. And we were talking about this in our group earlier, is that it's not just about within your team, but cross-departmentally. And I know that, you know, traditionally there's often been some tension between anthropologists and lawyers and other things, but I think it is about trying to cut through that and have those respectful but strong conversations, pushing back on briefs, pushing back on unrealistic timeframes, those sorts of things. But, you know, to be able to have like that respectful professional relationship is really, really important, and it makes a huge difference. Pre and debriefing for meetings and big events, again, it seems kind of really logical, but it's amazing how it can, when you're busy and things are happening, it can quickly go out the window. But if you don't have those pre and debriefing, it can be really detrimental to the running of a meeting. It's not just about logistics or safety, but it's like the context. What's the politics of the group? What might go wrong on the day? Like, who is responsible for what on the day? Who's speaking about what? What if this happens? Who's going to deal with that? And I think, that really does make a big difference when you're able to have those conversations before. And then debrief after about, did that go really well? Didn't it? Okay, what do we need to deal with? Regular meetings, and I've said I know that is boring because everybody, hates meetings, but, having those kind of fortnightly or monthly, we have claim team meetings or PVC meetings across the departments, and look, they don't always happen because of the schedules of people, but where we can, we try to do it. And it's across, legal, research, heritage, research, and it's just that understanding of, well, what are people doing, what's the allocation, what are some of the key issues at the moment, what do we have to work on, and I think it does help with the collaboration process. And then, opportunities for growth and promotion. Obviously, career paths is one of the things that, we all talk about, and it's always been something that has been a bit of a sticky issue. And I think it is really important within, the rep bodies and the teams, having like a tiered structure where people can work their way up is, I think, important. And, myself, I started as an anthropologist and, moved to senior and research manager and now in my position that I'm in. And I think having that opportunity there is great for retention. And also it's the succession planning. It allows for people who have been in the organisation for a while and who've got that knowledge and that understanding, they can move up into a senior position and you've retained a lot of that knowledge. So that's really important, and I think that definitely helps with training and onboarding of new staff who are coming in to fill those positions as well. So having the opportunity for growth, succession planning, promotion, but look, that's not always possible if you've got positions that are filled. So one of the things that I've been thinking about and been talking about with some of the seniors is how to give people carriage of projects. So maybe they're not in a senior position, but they're looking after this particular project. They're managing that project or that aspect of things, and that gives people some ownership and agency over that as well. So I think that's important. In terms of external growth, for those who are at the conference last year, I did a presentation about the restructure that we've done, but also about the internship. So with Curtin, ironically, UWA have approached us about some internship possibilities for anthropologists and also about presenting at some of their masterclasses, which haven't started yet, about career options and working for a rep body. So that will be interesting to see how that develops and if that develops. And I hope it does, because despite the kind of history with UWA and what happened there, I think it's important to promote anthropology, and it's about the students and them having access to the information. So we've also had the Curtin internships recently with Aurora. CNTA are doing their one soon. So that's really great to be involved in all of those internship programs. Stalls at various events, so NAIDOC Week, Reconciliation Week and things, and we'll often have a WIMAC stall set up somewhere. And I know last year we had a couple of anthros that went along and they were there and they were talking to people about family information forms and some of the work that WIMAC does, and just sort of promoting, or not even promoting, but just letting people know that we're here and this is what we do. I think as well, like the informal networking of WA NTRBs, and I know there's a few people in the room, but just being able to like reach out, have an email, have a conversation, talk about various things, ask for advice or support and just sort of see what's going on is really great. And I think it is really important as well. Obviously we have the CNTA and we have all sorts of things, but, just being able to pick up the phone and call, Trinity from Goldfields and have a chat about something, or, call KLC and have a chat, with Heather or Calista or something is great. And I think it's really important. Obviously participation in conferences and professional development, so being able to send people to these sorts of conferences, IATSIS, AAS, again, just, people are being exposed to more than just what's in their little patch. And I think, being able to talk to people and network, again, it seems kind of really logical, but I think it's really important. We also have ASWA in WA, and I know Durham and Eddie here, yeah. And I know that sort of in the past there have been a lot of heritage professionals sort of involved in ASWA, but that's really changing, and there's lots of events and conferences and a real support network that I think that is building up around that, and I think that's really great, and it's really important for people to be involved in that. So it's nice to have that kind of state-based support network too. And I think that's everything. Thanks. Questions, anyone?
Hey, Emma. You talked a bit about a capability assessment model to be able to recruit people who aren't necessarily from an anthropology background. What do you think would be included in that?
Well, hang on. That was something that I left out of the very long presentation. So I'm more than happy to sort of have an offline discussion and share what we can about that. The same with the work level standards.
Thanks, Emma and Amy, for your great presentation. My name's Yvette, I work at the Northern Land Council, and I've been a part of these discussions in getting this workforce planning paper together. I was just thinking, Emma, in your description at the start, we were talking about 150 applied anthropologists from 11 NTRBs and NTSBs. We should also start thinking about maybe including PBCs as well, because more and more post-native title, a lot of the career pathways for applied anthropologists are going to be in PBCs. So I hope it's not too late, the planning process, but we should also think about this work standard to be something that, as PBCs establish themselves, is something that they can include as well.
I agree with that. Done. Great. Thank you.
Thank you.